Good evening, Xavier basketball fans. It's the Raging X Report, and I'm your host, Jim Reeker. It's time for the Musketeers 2019-20 season to begin. It actually has begun. We're going to give you a preview show of the upcoming season and actually cover the first game that we went and watched the other night and preview the upcoming game tomorrow with the Siena Saints. Let me introduce now our super analyst, Bill Gabriel. How you doing tonight, Bill?
I'm doing great, Jim. How are you?
I am great. The basketball season is upon us. It has come very, very quickly. Only November 7th here that we're recording, and we're a game into the season. We haven't even got our preview show in, so we're going to hit the ground running tonight. Just a quick review of the Musketeers season last year. Musketeers finished the season 19-16, going 9-9 in the Big East, having a big comeback as they were in last place at the beginning of the season for quite a while. Finished in a four-way tie for third place. Went to the second round of the Big East tournament before getting beat out. Then got an invitation to the NIT tournament. They defeated the Toledo Rockets 78-64 to go on to the second round, where they lost in overtime to the Texas Longhorns 78-76. That game was played on the road. And one of the big things that have made us very optimistic about this upcoming season is the fact that they won 8 of their last 11 games on the downstretch of last year. Players not returning this year, the graduate students of Kyle Castlin, Ryan Wellage, and Zach Hankins, and, of course, Elias Harden transferred. Well, Bill, excited for the Musketeers season this year?
Oh, definitely. I'm optimistically hopeful for a really solid season from the Muskies this year.
Yeah, everybody has high hopes. They're ranked in certain polls as high as number 19 in the country, and everybody expects them to return to the NCAA tournament again this year. And, of course, as Musketeer fans, we haven't seen a back-to-back year of missing the NCAA in a long time. Well, let's get right to the preview. Let's talk about the returning players, and I'll put out some basic stats on them from last year, and you can kind of talk about a little bit how you think they each need to improve or where they will fit into the system. Let's start with senior Quentin Goodin. Been pretty much a 4-year starter, came on his freshman year after Edmund Sumner was injured to take over the point guard position. He averaged 11 points and 4.8 assists. Again, I think I just was looking, he's somewhere about 7th on the all-time assists for a career. And I believe has a possibility, if he maintains the pace he's set for the first 3 years, of possibly being the number 1 assist leader for a career in all of Xavier history. And that would be something really great for Quentin to hang his hat on. What do you see for Quentin this year? Remember, he was injured a little bit at the start of last year. Not sure if he ever was fully healthy throughout the year, but did come back and play about 3/4 of the season.
Yeah, I think the big thing for Quentin is that he did have – I remember the last year the big hype for him was it was his first healthy off-season where he was totally healthy and could work on his game. And he got injured at the start of last year, really. I think it limited him for a little while. And so the flip side of that is this is his second healthy off season where he didn't have any kind of foot or leg issues. Supposedly he's worked a lot on his game. So I think then the big question mark becomes, can he stay healthy for the full slate of preseason, regular season, and then conference play games? And then if that's the case, can he kind of fix the two things that nag at his play that I think frustrate most Xavier fans? It's his unhealthy number of turnovers for a point guard and the forced pull-up jumper from the three-point line off the dribble. It's one thing to shoot those shots in rhythm, but another to just pull him up off the dribble, and he has a tendency to take a few bad ones that way.
Yeah, I think I'd like to see Quentin. I guess the best term I could use is shot selection. I think that's what you're referring to. That, yeah, we want to see him knock down the open three-pointer when he can set his feet and square up. But too often we see him try to take three-point shots maybe off the dribble that's not part of his game. He's a great driving guard, great, again, assist man, has high assists, can dish and make the offense really work well. Next, we move on to Paul Scruggs. Averaged 12.3 points last year, and actually is a very good rebounding guard, so to speak, has the long arms, very athletic, averages almost 5 rebounds a game. That's pretty high for the position he plays. Talk about Paul and what you'd like to see out of Paul this season and where his game can improve.
I think for Paul, the just keep playing as he was playing at the end of last year. I mean, he was playing very well. I think he was the second leading three-point percentage shooter last year for the Muskies at 38%. And he was only, of the guys who got up over 100 attempts, only Wellich shot better than him for the Muskies last year. And I think, he showed that in the first game against Jacksonville, that he just, he can knock down that three-point shot at the new further distance, and did that. So I'd say, the thing for him that he's got to be careful of is the turnovers, just making sure that he is not committing turnovers that are unforced, and, just making sure that he has a really low number of those throughout the year.
Yeah, and looking here, too, I also see where he led the team in steals last year. He has that wide wingspan of his and is often getting his hand in and knocking the ball out for a steal. And I have to agree with you. I just think this guy, I think he's still got more up in his game. I just think he could become really a superstar. And thinking about it in the past, sometimes he puts on flashes for 5-6 minutes, but then there are games where he just kind of goes away and he's not even there on the offensive end, although I know he does play very good defense also. All right, moving right along, senior Tyreek Jones averaged 11.3 points and 7.7 rebounds, which led the team last year. He came out with a double-double the other night against Jacksonville. I think he had 17 points and 11 rebounds. Talk about Tyreek, and what are we going to see out of Tyreek this year? Anything he needs to improve?
I would say that as far as improving, I mean, when you're I don't want to say he's slightly undersized as a post player because he's so thick and strong, but height-wise, stature-wise, he's a bit undersized to be going up against some of the closer to 7-foot centers. And so I think if he's going to demonstrate an improvement anywhere, it might be to be able to do some stuff facing up to the basket, short 8-10-foot jumpers, stuff like that. But, man, I'll tell you what, I love watching that guy play down low. And with his back to the basket, he's got that nice little hook shot. He's got some other power moves that are just they're awesome to watch him when he gets the ball down there, work on an opponent. And he's pretty smart. He sees that double team coming. He kicks that ball out of there. He, gets it out to the open shooters. So I would say that, that's just probably the little thing that I'm thinking he probably, if he was going to try to move his career on, would definitely need to show that he can hit that little short jump shot. And then he's definitely got to improve his free throw percentage. He shot about 64% last year. I'd like to see him get that up closer to 70, just to make himself that much more dangerous so people don't apply the foul him and hope he doesn't make free throws technique.
Do you think he could be the best big man in the Big East at the end of this season?
I'd say if he is not in the top 3, then somebody I'm not aware of really came on, and he definitely is in that picture.
Yeah, he just very impressive the other night. I think he was 7 for 8. Just seems very under control. He's a very good passer too. If he gets double teamed down low, then he finds the open man. I think he's going to have a good senior year. I think he's gotten healthier, better shape. That was his problem there for the first couple of years. He couldn't play very extended minutes. He was always too tired and had some knee problems. But I think he's worked very hard over the 3 years he's been at Xavier, now into his 4th year, and I think he's the finished product we've been waiting for, and it's going to be interesting to see just how far he goes. And then the first team Big East returnee, Nagi Marshall, led the team in scoring last year, 14.7 points, and also 7.2 rebounds per game. What do we know? I think I know your answer, but I'll ask you, where do we need to see some improvement from Nagi?
I think Nagi is definitely a candidate to be in the him and Quentin for the school of when to take a shot, when not to take a shot, shot selection. Nagi led the team last year in 3-point attempts with 173 attempts, and he was fourth of the 4 guys who took over 100 attempts at 27%. So that's a number. One of those numbers has got to change. Either the percentage has to go up or the number of attempts has got to go down. And he's just got to, commit to becoming more using his mid-range and his pull-up game and his get-to-the-basket game more, which is that part of his game is awesome.
Yeah, and if he can hit the open three-pointer, then he does, give the defense all kinds of fits because of his size. You got to come out and guard him. And then, like you say, he's got a great, drive to the basket game and mid-range jump shot game. So, again, if he can put it all together, I think he could be a special player. Only a junior, but we were talking the other night, might be his last year at Xavier in this day and age of, guys leaving early when they think that they're ready for the next level. And then one other player we saw very briefly the other evening, hasn't had a great career so far at Xavier, and that's Deonte James. Anything to say about him? Any thoughts before we move into the newcomers?
I think I made the comment that he looks fit. Like, he definitely looks like he is trying to reshape his body to be more agile and be able to move out there a little better. So it's just, hopefully, I'd like to see him, if he's going to get opportunities to get out there, really show that he can play on the defensive end, rebound, that kind of stuff. Because, man, it's got a nice jump shot. I mean, he's got a really nice shooting stroke, especially from the 3-point line. So that would be the one thing I think for him is fitting in defensively and being an average to above average defender when he's out there.
Yeah, I see probably Deonte just needs to keep working, and hopefully this year might be again not very many minutes or limited time for him. But we've seen some Xavier players in the past not get many minutes in their first couple of years, but continue to work and be contributors in their final 2 years. Well, let's move on to the new players, and we have a bunch of them, actually 8 new faces on the roster this year. Why don't we first of all pull out, I know you've been working hard today, so I don't know if you saw the news, but Deonte Miles has decided, or they have decided to redshirt him. Any thoughts on that issue for him? I don't know if you knew that, but that was made official today from Xavier.
I mean, I for a guy who's grown as much as he has in the last 2 years, I think that's just a great move. Allow his muscular strength to catch up with his body, and it may protect him from some injury. And as well allow him to be more effective down low against the dudes like Tyreek who are men down low and despite his size may get, physically mismatched due to that, so hopefully that just works out really well for him and with the depth that they seem to have, with some of the other newcomers, I don't think they're going to feel like there's a need to rush him and allow him to develop and mature physically into the body that he has just kind of grown into.
Yeah, I think you make good points, and actually Travis Seale said he really left the decision up to him, but discussed it with him. You make the point. He said he thought that he became aware of what he needed to do, how much stronger he had to get by having to go against Tyreek every day in practice, and realize that, these are the kind of guys that play in the Big East. And probably you talk about the injury factor, probably, not being as strong and going against those guys. And Travis Steele said, it was a tough decision because he said, I know he can help us. I know he would play in some games. But they looked back at, and they mentioned Jason Love, Kenny Freeze, a couple other players. I can't remember that they said that they only played 40, 50 minutes total their freshman year. And if they would have redshirted and had another year, how much better, because they kind of came into their own that third year or fourth year actually for them, which would have only been the third year. And again, the fact that the rules, if our listeners don't know, it's different from football and basketball. Once he steps on the floor, that red shirt is over, and he can be pulled out and played at any time. It's just that he would have to count this year. So Travis said if we have, unforeseen injuries hit us where we would need him, we could still use him. But he gets to do everything that any other player on the team does except playing the games. He practices, he travels. He said he'll get in some extra time of working out in the weight room. So probably a good decision. I've seen him play a little bit, and again, he doesn't look like a 6'11" freshman project. He's got some skills, and Travis Steele believes he may ultimately at one point be one of the best players to ever play at Xavier if he continues to improve. The other thing they pointed out, and I checked on, he just turned 18 years old in August. So he's a very, very young college freshman. So he said technically there are guys right now still playing high school basketball that are older than him. So probably a good move. And again, we look for great things from him for the future. Two other players that we haven't seen lately, maybe you just make a few comments. Of course, the one is the highly touted Kiki Tandy from Kentucky. Sounds like he's going to be out a couple weeks yet. And then another player from Georgia, 6'9", Daniel Ramsey. Hasn't seen much action at all. Has been injured with knee injuries now. Is in concussion protocols, not out of that yet. Anything you want to talk about those two?
I think, Daniel Ramsey, I think he is probably part of the reason why the decision for Deonte was made. I think might be slightly ahead of him as far as in the rotation goes once he gets back healthy. I haven't seen much of his game, but I heard he's pretty solid down low. And then Kiki, obviously very explosive. His foot or ankle issue that's got him, sidelined right now and out. I think they're just being smart and letting that totally heal before they push him, because he's such an athletic player that, I don't want to see him hobbled by that just recurring over and over again throughout the year, because they're really going to need him as they start moving closer to that conference play and the late season where everybody's getting beat up, and the more healthy bodies they have, the better.
All right, let's talk about the two freshmen we did see quite a bit the other night, Demir Bishop and Zach Freemantle. I think going to be a crowd favorite, one of my favorites already. Very impressed with him. Talk about Zach Freemantle and Demir Bishop, who we did get to see the other night.
I think Zach. I think he's pleasantly surprised the coaching staff with how college-ready his game kind of was. He definitely has a really solid frame for a college freshman, and you can just see that as he gets the ball down low, he just kind of has a feel for what he wants to do with it, and he's got a nice solid offensive approach down there. He doesn't seem to be too phased deer in the headlight look for a college freshman, so that was good to see. And then Demir, man, that dude was long and athletic, and he was making plays all over the place defensively and had some nice offensive spots. He didn't finish a couple times, but I think that was because of the jitters of his first college game.
Yeah, looking at the stats right here in front of me, 19 minutes, Zach Fremantle had 11 points and 5 rebounds. Demir Bishop got a couple more minutes. He's in 21 minutes. The thing I didn't realize, but looking at his stats here, he had 7 rebounds, and that's pretty impressive for 21 minutes, and actually had 3 assists also. Well, let's talk about the transfers we have coming in. One of them has been injured, hasn't gotten back, and actually Travis Steele said didn't think he was near what he's going to be the other night, still trying to work the rust off of the time he had to sit out. I think he had some back injuries. But talk about Jason Carter coming from OU. And the thing about Jason Carter, actually a graduate student, but still has 2 years of eligibility since he only played 2 in his 3 out at OU. And then, of course, Bryce Moore coming from Western Michigan, but obviously coming here from Indianapolis, the Park Tutor program where Trayvon Blewett played. So talk about the 2 graduate students that we have coming in.
All right. Hit upon Bryce Moore real quick. He was advertised coming in as a significant defensive improvement over, so I think some of the grad transfers that came in last year. Everybody said he's an elite level defender, and he was on the All-MAC defensive team. So obviously the coaches up there agree with that scouting report on him, and that he was a above average outside shooter. So, I think that that's exactly the kind of contribution for a role player that this team's going to need. Somebody who can come in, still shut down some solid offensive players that exist in the Big East when we get to conference play, and contribute in that way, as well as help keep some spacing so the bigs can work down low, and so that he'll be a nice addition for those reasons. And then Jason Carter, what we saw from him, I don't think he's quite fit into the role that they envisioned because of the lack of just being able to practice and stuff. I know, man, when you got a back injury, you don't feel like doing anything. You can't hardly move. So I'm sure it's been a long process for him to get that back to the point where he feels comfortable with his back and doing that. But everything that kind of read about him heading into this is he's the kind of guy that you run your offense through on the secondary side of things. He's not the point guard, but he's the point forward. And they say he's a really unselfish player. The guys really like him in practice because they know if he gets the ball and they get open, it's coming to him.
Yeah, and I think you believe, and others, that he will be probably a starter once he gets back into his full game. We might mention that Leighton Schrand, who actually was a walk-on, and I believe he's actually under scholarship now, and actually has started the preseason game and the first regular season game. What does he bring to the team? Don't want to leave him out. He has been an important part of the team so far.
I think what he brings just some consistency of knowing the system, and I believe what Coach Seale commented about him in the post-game press conference was that he just trusts him. He knows he'll be where he needs him to be. And I'll tell you, if you've coached and you got a guy on your bench, on your roster who doesn't matter whatever you say, he's going to be exactly where he's supposed to be. That's a guy who you're going to get out there and you're going to trust and let him play. So that's good for him. That's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Let's move forward. Let's talk about the team overall. Let's you can put it 1, 2, 3. What would be, and you can put them in order if you go 3, or you can just give me one. What's the one thing or the top 3 things that this team must get better at or do better this year to improve?
I would say that the number one thing that this team has to do is avoid the unforced turnover, because they just lose offensive possessions that way. And then the second thing they have to do is they have to really focus on their shot selection. And then after that, I say just continue to bring defensive pressure and defensive game plans that really stymie their opponent and give them a chance to do well.
Yeah, and I agree totally on both of those, and I'd throw a third thing in. This team has to improve their free throw shooting. That's been a staple of Xavier. It's been why Xavier's been so successful, I believe, in the last 30 years. I've always shot a really good free throw percentage, some of the highest in the nation, and that just wasn't there this last year, and it hasn't been here. I'm just looking at the other night as we move into the Jacksonville game we're going to talk about. They only shot 58%, and they cannot shoot that for the season and hope to, have the kind of season that I think most people expect them.
Yeah, I agree with that. That's another thing that they definitely need to focus upon this year.
All right, let's talk about that Jacksonville game, the Jacksonville Dolphins. Xavier won at 76-57. I think at one time had over a 30-point lead. Again, I think I said to you that my concern was they were outscored in the second half. Now, was that because they lost focus? Was that because they were rotating a lot of players in, which maybe created, some issues of playing with different players at different times? How did you see that? And what were the takeaways of that game?
I think the thing that they just knew they were the better team. They put it on them the first half. Probably got a little comfortable with that. The second half, kind of, maybe they were running some stuff. It's so hard to know because sometimes the coach may call offensive sets that they haven't ran a whole lot, or they didn't want to run anything new because once you put stuff on film, it's on film. And so maybe they're running the same stuff, and Jacksonville had seen it, so they knew it was coming. And also, I think if I remember right, that little guard for Jacksonville had about a 10-minute period where he got hot, hit about 4 or 5 shots, and then they switched up who was guarding and kind of cooled him back off. But I think that might have been the difference. I think he hit a couple threes and a couple pull-up jumpers and stuff. So, and yeah, then mixing in the other players, just when you create some different combinations and guys who haven't worked with each other that much, that can hinder your offensive flow a little bit.
Well, a win is a win. Of course, Jacksonville, I think they were coming off a 8-12 season the year before, had lost their 2 best players. So, things are going to be, I think, a little bit different with our opponent tomorrow night, the Siena Saints, who come from the MAC conference, not the MAC conference we're familiar with, but the one out east, the MAAC. Started off with a 96-80 victory over American University. One thing I did note that they have a first-year coach, although he was a former assistant with the school. But what should we expect to see, or who should we be worried about for the Siena Saints?
Well, the Saints come in there. I think I looked up. They were picked to finish 6th in the Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference this year. But they, from what I gathered from their American stat sheet, is they're a pretty good three-point shooting team. They hit 52% of their three-pointers against American. And one of those shooters who was in the high 40s for that is Jalen Pickett, who is a guard for Siena, and he is the preseason player of the year in the MAAC. So they're getting a team who actually returns their best player and is a pretty good three-point shooting team all around. So that's going to give them a different look, having to defend the perimeter consistently and, dealing with someone who is, I believe he's on the Lou Henson Award list, which is the award that is given to the top mid-major Division I player in America. So that's going to be a good matchup.
Yeah, I heard Travis Steele say, he was talking about him a little bit in his press conference. It says he scores every way there is to score. So he's a driver. He's a mid-range guy. He can shoot the three. He's picked as player of the year in their conference. He was actually rookie of the year last year. He was only a freshman. This is only his second year. Actually, he had declared for the NBA draft, but then, like many of them, pulled out and decided to come back. The other player I saw that had a good game against American was Elijah Burns, who's a 6'8" senior. He's actually a transfer from Notre Dame, and I look back, he didn't play a whole lot at Notre Dame. In fact, I think his whole story is he grew up in the area where Siena College is in New York. It's close to his hometown. So he was, I think, a graduate student with a final year left because he had been injured 1 year up at Notre Dame, but actually really hadn't played a whole lot at Notre Dame, and actually transferred, I think, right near the beginning of last year. So he had 19 points in that game against American, so he might be someone, a little bit older, experienced player that the Musketeers will have to worry about. Well, I got a couple things for you here. Anything else on the Saints in the game tomorrow for the Musketeers? That game's at 7 o'clock at the Cintas Center. An unusual Friday night game.
Yeah, I just want to see them roll out there and take care of business.
All right, I'll do a little challenge with you here. I think I counted. If I counted correctly, the Musketeers will have 13 non-conference scheduled games. And, of course, they're 1-0 already, so they got 12 more of those. It's going to have you pick the number you think they will win out of those 13, and then I will either say it'll be more or less than that number. That'll be our challenge bet. So of the 13 games, what do you think the Musketeers' record will be before they start Big East play?
All right, I'm going to make you work. I'm going to go with 11 wins.
11 wins. All right. Yep. So you're making me either pick 12 or 10, and I'm going to go with my head, not my heart, and I'm going to pick 10. So 11 or more, you win. 10 or less, I win. I hope you're right. But I believe the Musketeers got a pretty challenging schedule. They go to Charleston. There's a couple probably formidable opponents there that they would see in the second or third round. UC Bearcats look pretty good this year, although that's a home game with the crosstown shootout. We got the Missouri Tigers, who we've had trouble with for the last few years, coming to town next week. And who else on this? TCU. And I think that one's on the road. That might be a tough. Might be a tough game. And Wake Forest. That's another one on the road. So again, I hope you're right. I hope we're both wrong, and at 13-0, getting ready for the Big East. But I'm going to go with 10. You got the 11, and we'll figure out what the prize will be. We will revisit that throughout the non-conference schedule and see where we stand and see where we finish up. Trivia. A little trivia here for you. I like to. This is kind of a 3-part question. This may be totally out of your, I don't know, I forget sometimes you're a lot younger than me. The Jacksonville Dolphins that we played the other night, were you aware that they were national runners-up 1 year?
Oh, boy. How long ago was that?
Well, that's my first question. Do you know what year Jacksonville Dolphins finished second in the country? They went to the title game and lost.
Oh, Oh, I don't remember it, so I'm going to take a slight guess and say it might have been before 1975.
It was before 1975. It was actually the year 1970. Now, here's a question with your background in sports, what you know about college basketball. You should be able to figure out, I think. And with that, that's a hint. Who did the Jacksonville Dolphins lose to in the 1970 national championship game?
70. 70 in Kentucky?
No. This team had many national championships during that time period.
Oh, UCLA.
UCLA. And the final question, this one I'm sure you probably don't know, but do you know who the All-American was that led the Jacksonville Dolphins to that final game in 1970? Actually came back and played in the 1971 season. They didn't make it that far. Led the nation both seasons in rebounding. He was 7'2", went on to play, I believe, in the NBA for a few years, but might be someone you've never heard of.
Probably.
I remember. Huh?
It probably is someone I've never heard of.
Artis Gilmore.
Okay.
He was
I
7'2"
have heard of him,
and led the Jacksonville Dolphins. Most people don't remember that. Of course, that was when UCLA was dominated, and who were they going to beat that year? But Jacksonville made it to the final game. Actually, we're an independent team that year and finished the season 27-2. So that loss in the national championship game was only their second defeat all year long, playing a national independent schedule. Well, any thoughts for the listeners before we sign off tonight, Bill?
Hey, just let's get excited about this season. I think it's going to be a good one.
All right. We will. We want to thank Mike Goodpastor and the Grueling Truth Network for putting our podcast out there for you to listen to. We will hopefully be settling into this is a Thursday night, and again, with our schedules and the season rapidly coming upon us, we kind of tried to throw this one together as a preview show as the season already started. We'll try to get a common time of the week when we post our podcast so you can look for it on the Grueling Truth Network. But we will end by just saying, go Muskies.
Go Muskies.